The headline alone made people stop scrolling. Cleveland won 24-10, and a fifth-round rookie quarterback just shattered a nearly 30-year Browns curse. Shedeur Sanders stepped into his first regular season start and didn't just survive, he delivered. A 52-yard laser to Isaiah Bond, a 66-yard screen TD to Dylan Sampson, a poised bounce back after an interception. Flashes like that from a debut don't happen by accident. They force a conversation no one in Cleveland wanted to have for decades. Maybe finally the quarterback problem is fixable. But the real story split in two the moment the confetti should have been flying. On the field, teammates celebrated. A defense turned the game into a rout, and fans dared to hope again. Off the field, the head coach's answer to a simple question ignited a wildfire. When Kevin Stefanski was asked if Shedeur would start the next game, his reply, measured, non-committal, "I'm not going to get into that," landed like a punch to a fan base primed for clarity. Social media erupted. Pundits smelled drama. Supporters read it as caution. Critics read it as cowardice. This isn't just about one game. It's about narrative, development, power, and the invisible mechanics that make or break young quarterbacks. One rookie's first win can be a moment of hope, or the start of another drawn-out debate about leadership, commitment, and what a franchise actually believes. To understand why Shedeur Sanders' debut shook the entire league, you have to understand the ghost he walked in and accidentally exorcised. Cleveland isn't just a franchise with quarterback problems. It's a franchise defined by them. For nearly 30 years, a Browns rookie starting his first NFL game wasn't a moment of excitement. It was a moment of dread. Fans didn't hold their breath out of hope. They held it out of muscle memory, because they'd seen this exact movie play out 17 straight times. Different quarterbacks, different coaches, different eras, same ending. This wasn't a streak people joked about lightly. It became a national punchline, yes, but locally, it felt heavier. Every new rookie was introduced as the future, only to become another cautionary tale by the end of 4 quarters. The streak stretched across generations of fans, across rebuilds, across regimes. Kids grew up, graduated college, and got married before the Browns saw a rookie QB win his first start again. That's how deep the drought went. So when Shedeur stepped in, not a first-round savior, not a top 10 can't-miss prospect, but a fifth-rounder thrust into the job because the season had already spiraled. The expectations weren't high. If anything, fans just hoped he wouldn't become the 18th name added to the list of failed openings. But instead of freezing under the weight of that history, he broke it. And he didn't break it quietly. He did it with throws that made even veterans turn their heads. He did it with composure that didn't match his draft slot. He did it in a way that made people think, wait, this feels different. That's why the reaction to his performance has been so visceral. This wasn't just a rookie winning a game. It was a rookie undoing a psychological knot that had tightened around the franchise for 3 decades. A knot former high picks couldn't untangle. A knot big-name signings couldn't loosen. A knot 17 others pulled on and only made tighter. But as soon as the celebration started, the next twist hit, and it shifted the entire energy of the moment. What made Shedeur Sanders' debut impossible to brush aside wasn't just the win, it was how he won. Rookie quarterbacks usually enter the league with training wheels attached. Coaches dial up safe throws, checkdowns, short concepts, anything to prevent disaster. But Shedeur didn't look like someone trying to avoid mistakes. He looked like someone trying to make a statement. The first moment that snapped fans to attention was that 52-yard bomb to Isaiah Bond. That play wasn't designed to be easy. The pocket collapsed, protection broke down, and most rookies in that situation either turtle for a sack or force a panic throw. Instead, Shedeur slid, reset, kept his eyes downfield, and unleashed a pass that cut through the air like it had somewhere important to be. It wasn't luck. It wasn't a busted coverage gift. Meeting something Cleveland hasn't seen in a long time. Then came the 66-yard screen pass that turned into his first career touchdown. Screens look simple, but they're some of the trickiest plays to execute cleanly. A quarterback has to sell the drop, manage the timing, draw in defenders, then flip the ball with just the right touch. One hesitation and the whole thing collapses. But Shedeur ran it like someone who's been doing this on Sundays for years. The result? A highlight that instantly made the rounds online. Even the interception told a story. Not about a flaw, but about his mentality. Many rookies crumble after their first NFL mistake. They get hesitant. They overcorrect. They start playing small. But Shedeur walked back out with the exact same calm pace, the same poise, the same willingness to push the ball when the opportunity showed up. That's a trait you can't coach into someone. That's something they walk in with. These were the flashes that made the locker room raise their eyebrows. That made fans wonder if this might be different. That made national analysts start shifting their tone mid-broadcast. Shedeur didn't just run the offense, he elevated it. But what happened next wasn't about talent or highlights. It was about tension, power, and a head coach who poured gasoline on an already electric moment. As impressive as Shedeur Sanders was, even he would admit he wasn't the only force on that field. If the offense provided the spark, the defense supplied the explosion. And they didn't just show up, they took over. This wasn't a normal defensive performance. It was a demolition. The Raiders never settled in, never found rhythm, never even caught a breath. Because Cleveland's defense was suffocating everything they tried to build. The Browns racked up 10 sacks, a number you rarely see outside of video games. 10. That's not pressure, that's a siege. And in the middle of that storm was Myles Garrett, a one-man disruption machine who collected 3 sacks on his own. On every snap, he looked like he was trying to erase the Raiders' entire game plan. Offensive linemen weren't blocking him. They were merely delaying the inevitable. And when a defense plays with that kind of ferocity, everything changes for a rookie quarterback. Suddenly, Shedeur didn't need to play superhero. He didn't need to chase points, force throws, or carry the whole weight of the offense. The defense bought him time, literally and mentally. They kept the Raiders pinned. They flipped field position. They turned every opposing drive into a claustrophobic nightmare. All Shedeur had to do was stay composed, execute the plays in front of him, and capitalize when the defense handed him momentum. And that's exactly what he did. He didn't waste great field position. He didn't panic when the game tightened for a moment. He didn't let the pace of the NFL speed him up. Instead, he blended into the rhythm the defense created, a rhythm built on domination. But here's the part people underestimate. Even with a perfect defensive performance, quarterbacks can still blow games, rookies especially. Bad decisions, sloppy mechanics, panic throws, we've seen it all before. Shedeur avoided every one of those traps. He matched the defense's energy with poise, something that stood out almost as much as the highlight throws. Yet for all the chaos the defense created on the field, the real chaos was brewing off it. And it was triggered by 12 quiet words from the head coach. The moment the game ended, the vibe in Cleveland should have been electric. A rookie broke a 30-year curse. The team finally had momentum. Fans finally had hope. The locker room finally had something to rally around. Everything was lined up for Kevin Stefanski to walk into that press conference and say the one sentence the entire city was waiting to hear. Shedeur Sanders is our starter moving forward. Instead, he stepped up to the mic, looked directly at the cameras, and delivered the most deflating, cautious, corporate answer imaginable. I'm not going to get into that. Those 6 words did more damage than a losing streak. because they didn't just dodge the question. They erased the emotional high Browns fans had been starving for. It felt like whiplash. Moments after a historic performance, the coach responsible for guiding this franchise forward acted like nothing happened. No endorsement, no confidence, no direction. Just a wall of polished, PR-safe fog. And the reaction was immediate. Cleveland fans exploded across social media. Memes, rants, disbelief, everything poured in. National analysts jumped on the clip within minutes. Some called the comment classic coach speak, but most saw it for what it looked like: hesitation, ego, indecision, or worse, fear. Reports began circulating that Stefanski didn't want to admit he misjudged his depth chart. Others speculated he was reluctant. Myles Garrett openly praised Shedeur and said the team needed to rally behind him, a subtle but unmistakable signal of where the locker room leaned. When your franchise cornerstone speaks that directly, people listen. What should have been a clean moment of celebration instantly turned into a controversy. Instead of discussing Shedeur's poise, fans were debating Stefanski's leadership. Instead of talking progress, people were talking politics. And that controversy is now growing into something Cleveland hasn't seen in years. Inside the locker room, the energy told a completely different story from Stefanski's press conference. Players weren't confused. They weren't cautious. They weren't waiting for more evaluation. They saw everything they needed to see, because players don't care about draft status, contracts, or depth chart politics. They care about results, command, and whether the guy under center makes them believe they can win. And from the moment Shedeur stepped into that huddle, something clicked. Veterans who've seen years of instability recognized his poise immediately. Offensive linemen talked about how calm he was pre-snap, how clearly he communicated protections, and how he never looked rattled, even when the pocket collapsed. Receivers told reporters they loved how aggressively he pushed the ball downfield. Defensive players, especially those who've suffered through offensive droughts, finally felt like their effort wasn't being wasted. But the biggest voice came from Myles Garrett, the face of the franchise, who went out of his way to publicly endorse Shedeur. When a superstar who commands that much respect says the team should rally behind the rookie, it sends a message louder than anything Stefanski said or refused to say. Players talk. Players feel momentum. And right now, that momentum is pointed directly at number 12. That's where the tension begins. Because when a coach doesn't commit, when he dodges questions, speaks vaguely, or delays decisions, the locker room notices. They start wondering why the hesitation exists. They start questioning whether politics, favoritism, or ego is interfering with what's obvious on tape. Even if no one says it publicly, those feelings ripple under the surface. And for a young quarterback, that ambiguity can be poisonous. Shedeur just delivered a historic win, broke a generational streak, and gave the team a spark they haven't had all season. But instead of receiving a clear runway to build on it, he was handed uncertainty. Not because of performance, but because of a coach unwilling to plant his flag. That disconnect between what players feel and what the coach is signaling is exactly how quarterback controversies begin. And Cleveland, of all franchises, cannot afford another one. The strange part about Stefanski's hesitation is that it comes at a moment when the Browns have absolutely nothing left to protect. At 3-8, the playoff race is long gone. The season isn't about wins anymore. It's about identifying the players who might shape the future. And in that context, refusing to commit to Shedeur isn't just cautious, it's counterproductive. This is supposed to be the exact moment when young quarterbacks get the keys, when the pressure to chase standings disappears and the pressure to grow ramps up, when coaches stop worrying about PR optics and start worrying about long-term development. Yet somehow, Cleveland's head coach took the most obvious decision on the board and turned it into a question mark. And that hesitation doesn't just affect Sanders. It affects the entire organization. Quarterbacks need stability. They need consistent reps with the starters, chemistry with their receivers, familiarity with linemen, and trust from the coaching staff. Every day a rookie spends wondering if he's even the guy is a day his growth slows. It's a day wasted. It's hesitation baked into development. And for a young quarterback in a notoriously brutal league, those small delays add up fast. But here's where it gets even more complicated. Indecision also reflects on the coach. When a leader wavers on the simplest, clearest call available, people start asking difficult questions. Front offices start wondering whether he can evaluate talent honestly. Players start wondering if decisions are being influenced by pride, not performance. And fans? Well, Browns fans have seen this movie too many times to not recognize the early signs. Because Cleveland's history isn't just filled with bad quarterbacks, it's filled with bad timing. Promising rookies who never got a real chance. Late-round talents buried under bad decisions. Coaches too scared to commit until it was too late. The franchise has been trapped in a loop of uncertainty for decades. And now, on the rare occasion they have a rookie who actually broke the cycle, Stefanski is flirting with repeating the same mistakes. But the bigger question, the one every fan is asking, is simple. Why is he hesitating? On the surface, Stefanski's non-answer looks like simple coach speak, the kind of cautious, risk-free language NFL coaches use when they don't want a headline. But the reaction to his comment shows people don't believe this was just a harmless deflection. They believe there's something underneath it, something political, something personal, something strategic. And while the true reasons aren't confirmed, several theories are circulating, each one revealing a different angle of Cleveland's internal tension. One theory, and the one fans shout the loudest, is that Stefanski doesn't want to admit he misjudged his depth chart. For most of the season, he rode with Dillon Gabriel, a safe, steady, low-ceiling quarterback who never elevated the offense. Switching to Shedeur now, after one electric win, would essentially be Stefanski saying, "I chose the wrong guy for 11 weeks." Coaches rarely enjoy admitting that. Another theory floating around sports media is ego-related. Reports suggest some coaches dislike being proven wrong by rookies, especially fifth-rounders who weren't supposed to challenge their carefully structured plans. Again, this is speculation, not confirmed. But it's a narrative fans and analysts keep repeating because it fits too well with how this situation unfolded. There's also a strategic angle. Some say Stefanski doesn't want to rush a young quarterback into the role too fast. That's a fair concern. But here's the problem. Shedeur already won a game, already handled pressure, already proved he belongs. The developmental caution argument feels paper thin when the alternative option has produced one of the least explosive offenses in the league. And finally, there's the job security angle. Stefanski is coaching for his future. If he picks the wrong quarterback down the stretch, it will be held against him in evaluations. Some insiders believe he's terrified of making a definitive call that could backfire. So instead, he avoids commitment entirely, hoping to buy time. But in the NFL, indecision is a decision. And in Cleveland, it's one the fan base is no longer willing to tolerate. The Browns have been trapped in a cycle for decades. A cycle of hesitation, misjudgment, and quarterbacks who never had a real chance to grow before being tossed aside. For the first time in nearly 30 years, that cycle cracked. A fifth-round rookie stepped onto the field, stared down the weight of a generational losing streak, and did what no Cleveland quarterback had done since 1994. He turned a nightmare into a win. That moment should have been the spark that unified the franchise. The moment where fans, players, coaches, and the entire city felt aligned for once. Instead, it exposed the same fracture Cleveland has been running from for years. Because as soon as the game ended, it became clear that this wasn't just about football. It was about identity, about leadership, about whether the Browns are finally ready to move forward, or whether they're about to sabotage the best chance they've had in decades. Shedeur Sanders delivered something you can't fake: belief. He gave the locker room energy. He gave the fan base hope. He gave the franchise a reason to dream bigger than 3-win seasons and endless rebuilds. That's not normal for a rookie. That's rare. But belief only matters if the organization protects it. If Stefanski continues playing neutral, this moment risks becoming another chapter in a long book of what could have been. But if the Browns commit, if they give Shedeur the reps, the runway, and the support every young quarterback needs, this debut could be remembered as the day everything changed. Not because he was perfect, but because he showed enough to build on. Because he proved pressure doesn't scare him. Because he erased a curse that swallowed quarterbacks far more hyped than he ever was. Cleveland finally has a spark. What they choose to do with it will determine whether this becomes a new era or just another missed opportunity.